Jean-Pierre
Bemba is a true compatriot, and therefore we have come here to say to Jean-Pierre Bemba that the Congolese loved him yesterday, that the Congolese love him today, and that his presence here was important so that together we can build the future differently.
Opposition leader and former vice president of the Democratic Republic of Congo has returned home after spending a decade in prison. Jean-Pierre Bemba left the DRC in 2007 and has been imprisoned at The Hague ever since. Now, in May, his war crimes convictions were overturned by the International Criminal Court, and now he is expected to challenge the country's longtime president, Joseph Kabila. But the ruling coalition said last week Bemba is disqualified from running because he still has another conviction for witness tampering on his record. But could Bemba's supporters still propel him to power? Well, to discuss Bemba's return and what's ahead for the DRC, I'm joined now from Leicester in the UK by Michael Tshibangu. He is the president of the Association for Development and Democracy in Congo. And in Dakar, Senegal, we have Fred Bauma. He is a human rights activist and a member of the Struggle for Change, a nonviolent and nonpartisan civil society movement. Thanks both so much for joining us. Let me begin in the UK with Michael. Legally, constitutionally, can Bemba run for president?
Well, that becomes a question of interpretation. As you have just mentioned earlier, Bemba has been acquitted of the main charges, which was dealing with war crimes and crimes against humanity. However, there's still a second case, which he was found guilty of witness tampering. However, legally speaking, witness tampering is not equal in DRC as corruption. For him to be ineligible, he will have to be guilty of corruption, and obviously, or else in The Hague he will say that he bribed some witnesses to testify for him. And in terms of the word, but he wasn't found guilty of corruption. He was found guilty of witness tampering. So there are some difference in terms of semantic, and that's where the problem will lie: is what interpretation the court will give, whether the court will think that he is indeed liable for corruption, or witness tampering is a different charge to that one of corruption.
Okay. So, Fred, let me ask you, would Bemba's return to politics, if allowed, be a good thing for the DRC?
I think in general, any Congolese who like to do politics should be allowed to do it. Do I think it will be a good thing for Congo politics? I think it will add diversity. But in terms of quality of the Congo politics itself, I don't think it will add something substantial. But Bemba is one of the main opponents since the end of the war, and I think for him to be back in the country in general, it's something very good. But it doesn't add anything substantial in terms of the quality of the Congo politics, or in terms of what they offer.
Okay.
I hope he can new projects and new ideas.
Okay, so if you think it wouldn't be necessarily beneficial, do you think it could be detrimental to Congolese politics, given that he is a former warlord?
Well, I don't think it will also be detrimental to Congo politics. I think he was brought to the courts, but I think there are many who could have been at his place and even being found guilty where he was acquitted. So I think for me, on a human rights activist point of view, it's just natural. It doesn't add something, and it doesn't destroy anything. Okay. It remains the same. It adds just the debate.
Okay. So that sounds very neutral coming from Fred, Michael, but let me ask you, I mean, how concerned should the Congolese public be that his return will prove very controversial? We know the ruling party will fight him contesting this election, but could it propel the DRC into dangerous territory?
Well, it shouldn't do. I mean, Bemba has been found, he has been acquitted, and obviously he has not been found guilty of charges of corruption, which will mean that he will be ineligible. So he should be able to run, and it should be up to the Congolese people to decide whether he is the man for them or whether he is not. So this is not it is not up to the ruling party to prevent him from running. And I think that if they try to prevent him, then we might have some conflict and maybe more tension. It is worth remembering that Bemba went into exile after fighting erupted in Kinshasa between his troop and the troops of Kabila, President Kabila, who is actually in power. So I think they should let him run and let the people decide. Let the people make that call through free and fair and credible elections.
Okay, Michael, but I mean, other than Jean-Pierre Bemba's irregularities, his record of witness tampering that still hasn't been overturned, there are some other very serious irregularities in the lead up to the next election. Joseph Kabila himself, he was supposed to be out of office back in 2016, but he's still there, still waiting for another election, which were already postponed twice. And he has not ruled out running again for president, which, correct me if I'm wrong, is in clear violation of the DRC's constitutional term limits. Is that good for the country?
Absolutely. For the past, Kabila, as you have mentioned, mandate ended in 2016, and elections should have been held before the end of his mandate constitutionally. So he has been delaying election and using all kind of tricks in order to stay in power. He has managed to get 2 extra years, and we think that that's enough, and it has to go, and elections should be held without him. And obviously, so far, he has not said explicitly that he will not be running again. However, the Constitution does not give him that option. The Constitution of DRC is very clear in terms of the number of mandates that he can run, and he has reached the 2 maximum limits. And the Constitution also makes it clear that the provision with regard to constitutional term limit cannot be amended by any way. So illegally, Kabila cannot stand. So we are hoping that in the coming days that he will not run, and his camp will choose another person to run, and let Congolese people choose, and let the law be respected.
Okay, Fred Bauma, what do you think is the likelihood of that Joseph Kabila will not run again, that elections will be allowed to proceed fairly and peacefully, perhaps with Jean-Pierre Bemba contesting this?
I think there is no way to think that the election will be proceed fairly and credibly. I think the level of corruption of this electoral process is very high, and it's difficult to think that you can have a credible election anymore. However, I think Kabila may appoint probably someone to run at his place, but his majority has made it clear that they will do all they can to make sure Kabila remain the leader of Congo politics before, during, and after the electoral process. So I think even if he appoints someone to run at his place, he will make all possible to make sure he is the one running beside.
And I mean, Fred, sadly, is that kind of the best the DRC can do at this point? Are there any real political alternatives? And I mean, is any candidate really actually interested in bringing an end to the ethnic and tribal rivalries that exist in the DRC that keep the country returning to conflict?
I think many of the candidates may do better than Kabila did during the 17 last year. I don't think there will be among all those who are willing to run, there is anyone who may be the best candidate, but I think many of them can definitely be better than Kabila in terms of bringing back security, in terms of guaranteeing basic need, and in terms of respecting basic human rights.
Oh, go ahead, Michael Tshibangu.
Indeed, as it has been mentioned there, I think the main thing here is the respect of the rule of law in DRC. What we have seen over the past few years is somebody that is trying to cling to power by any means necessary, and is also trying to prevent other people from who he sees as challenges from running. You have mentioned here that they say that Bemba cannot run, when it is not the role of a politician to decide who should run. We have the Electoral Commission. We also have the Constitutional Court, who have the mandate to obviously assess the eligibility of the various candidates. But here we've seen not just Bemba, but we also have Moise Katumbi, another candidate who has been forced into exile. This is become a very worrying pattern, and what we fear is that they're just going to organize another sham election, and which is only going to push DRC further into chaos and instability, and that is very worrying, because this country has seen a lot of trouble, a lot of this humanitarian crisis that is ongoing, and this will only make the situation on the ground even worse, and the conflict could spread regionally and also affect the neighbors in terms of the number of displaced and refugees and other people like that. So it is deeply concerning, and something has to be done, and elections have to be inclusive and credible to avoid chaos in DRC.
And how confident are you that that can happen, a credible, transparent election to avert further violence in the crisis you just talked about?
Unfortunately, we've not seen any signs that will indicate that Kabila is ready to hold organized, credible election. Because when Kabila mandate ended in 2016, an agreement was signed, and as part of that agreement, political prisoners were supposed to be released, and that has not been done. And politicians who have been forced into exile, like Moise Katumbi and many more, were supposed to return. That has not happened, and we see that Kabila has not at all respected the agreement that gave him another year to stay in power. So all this, what we're seeing is crackdown increasing. So is not really creating a climate that is conducing to free and fair and inclusive election in DRC. And what we have is a crisis of legitimacy, which can only be resolved by holding free and fair and inclusive election. Failing to do that will mean more chaos, more violence on the streets of DRC.
Okay, Michael Tshibangu, unfortunately, I'm going to have to give you the last word there because we are completely out of time for this segment. I'd like to thank both of our guests so much for joining us.